Hello, I'm Kajo. Welcome in. This is my illustration I made in honor of Earth Day. In this video, I want to share my illustration process with you. I made this for fun and because I was inspired by this quote on Twitter/X. It's funny because I saw this and thought it was quite poetic. So here's my initial doodle I did in my sketchbook, and later on I decided to make it into a cool wallpaper. So here we are. The first step of this illustration is a sketch and composition. In the time-lapse, you can see how I basically just redrew my doodle into Clip Studio, not really caring about composition just yet and focusing on my character. This allowed me to really work on the pose without worrying about the background so early into the process. Here is me struggling with composition. Looking back on it now, it really was a trust the process type of situation. Next was refining the sketch into a less messy sketch. I don't know about you, but this sketch was really confusing to read, but it helped me get started, so to make sure I can read it more efficiently for the line art, I need to refine it. Oh, and here, a yippee for your troubles. I worked out the face and hair, and then the ribs. I did not know the human bone structure off the top of my head, despite having taken both biology and anatomy classes, so I had to look up how many ribs a human had. The internet says 24, 12 on each side. That makes sense. I then proceeded to only draw like 5 of them. Anyways, just like the character refined sketch, I had to refine the background sketch. I wanted to implement as much greenery as possible to convey the overgrownness of the piece. Is that even a word? This is because I wanted it to make sense that there was ivy growing from between the character's ribs and make sure that it looked like the character belonged in the illustration. In the foreground, I put bushes for the sole reason that I did not know how to deal with the leg position. Also because I didn't want to draw the hand. It's great that I can do that, I know. Seriously though, I have to do some sort of study to get better at these type of things. I can only run so long before I have to fight the final boss. The last feature, which was very important to the purpose of the illustration, was the ivy. Drawing ivy is hard. Ivy has become my enemy. They're like weird worms that fold and stuff. Now into lining. Lining is great because you can then see the efforts of your planning. You can see me flipping the canvas quite frequently in this stage, and this is to make sure that I can catch any unbalances or mistakes, because after staring at the illustration one way for so long, even the biggest unbalances can go unnoticed. Like, maybe the jaw is too long on one side, or the other eye is in the wrong position. My favorite part to line is the hair though. Hair can be so flowy, and it really brings an illustration together, and it can also bring out the personality within the subject as well. My least favorite thing to line, however, are the clothes, or any fabric really. I haven't quite mastered how to properly convey folds on clothing, so all I could do was try my best and hope that when I add color, it'll make more sense. It really was a matter of a problem for future me. Future me hated past me, by the way. What is being shown right now is how I was able to learn how to draw hands. I start with blocking out the pieces such as the individual fingers, the palm of the hand, and then the muscle of the thumb. References also helped a lot when doing this stage. After blocking all that out, it's back to lining. Once again, I am demonstrating that my worst enemy is this ivy. It wasn't that bad this time though, because I was hanging out with some friends. It was at this point that I realized that there was a space where I could add some more detail, so I decided to add some more plants with some flowers on them. You can see that I initially wanted to go with the white lily flower, which I really like, but I wasn't sure how I would place them within such a small place in the torso. So I went for a simpler flower. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what flowers they are. I made them up, but they look pretty, right? After lining the torso, I started lining the background. I was still unsure about how I would go about coloring it, but I decided to line anyways because any progress is progress. I basically just wanted to keep myself moving along because I knew if I stopped here, it would make it harder for me to come back since backgrounds are one of my least favorite part of completing an illustration. It's really pretty, it makes it all come together, but it's hard. And I make it harder on myself by making complicated stuff. Also, did you see those two pots that I painstakingly made and detailed? Yeah, they didn't make into the final. 07. In this moment, I was so very thankful for the perspective ruler that was provided by CSP. It literally saved me a mental breakdown and a half. Everyone say thank you, perspective ruler. Next phase is base color. Base color is a pretty head-empty task to complete, so I chose to stream this part of the process. It allowed me to keep in touch with some friends and viewers, and it was super fun to just chat along. Here are some clips from them. Also, you should totally check me out on Twitch if you like cozy shenanigans. It is Kajoink Boop. In honor of Earth Day, lie down, slowly become dirt, and let ivy grow between the cracks of your ribs. So I was very inspired by that. And on a whim, I decided to make a whole wallpaper. So that is also my plan for this. I want to have it as a wallpaper because right now my wallpaper is a screenshot of a MS Paint cat. I can smell food outside. It's invading. It's invading my nostril. I had a pretty tough time figuring out what colors to make the house that the subject is leaning against. Later though, I realized that I had designed a little house on a prior stream and decided to use that house as a reference for color. Next was shading. Shading is both a blessing and a curse. Shading is nice and fun, and adds so much depth to your drawing if done right. It really does give me a reality check though, for the direction of the whole piece, as I usually don't take the direction of light into account, which I really should. This is where I start thinking about overlays I may use in the future, whether the tone will be warm or cool, or if it's day or night. In the time-lapse, you can see me struggle, and that is because I was struggling. There are so many different kinds of shading styles I would love to touch on, as well as rendering styles. So maybe I'll make another video about studying different art styles and trying them out one day. On a really satisfying note, you see those pans? I think this is where my learning art started going upwards again. Look at those folds, the shading. I'm not gonna lie, after working on the folds of these pants, the next time I drew clothes, folds and clothing seemed to make a little bit more sense to me. It gave me more motivation to continue drawing after feeling stuck in my learning process. After shading my lovely subject, I started shading the house. Walls are usually textured, so I explored some default brushes in CSP. In particular, I use a pastel chalk brush. I chose it because it was a rectangle. Once I found the brush I liked, I just went all in. Working on the background for this really made me realize that I need more brushes for foliage. Like, I used 2 brushes for the greenery you see, and both were CSP by default, so, ring ring ring, any artists want to let me know how you do your foliage? Ring ring ring, maybe some new brushes? Next was shading the ivy growing out of the ribs. And here's the actual speed of shading this. You see those pots I'm coloring in? Remember those? I didn't like them, so I cut them out. You know, if things aren't vibing right, you just cut it, you know? That's something that I like about art. It's yours. There's no one to really dictate you on how you make your own creations. You like something? Put it in and make it how you like. You find out you don't vibe as much as you thought you would? Erase it. Paint over it. Spam the undo button as many times as you need. Art shouldn't be pressure, pressure, pressure all the time. We got this. Look at this luscious green grass. It annoyed me so much at the time. Part of it was because I hadn't dealt with enough illustrations to practice making grass from scratch, and maybe that's something I should try for next time. The other part was because of the color. It was blending in with the rest of the plant life in the background, but don't worry, I fixed it. Boom. There it is. Color. I changed the environment a lot because the green was too much for me. So here I am, using the saturation, hue, and luminosity window to change the hue of the environment, most notably the grass, bush, little window plants, and tree leaves. I thought that this point in the illustration was incredibly important because of the whimsical feel that wasn't really apparent when initially coloring the background. As you can probably tell, this character isn't human, so changing the various colors of the greenery really emphasizes the fact that, you know, this is fantasy. This isn't a real place or even world or universe. So, if this is fantasy, I'm going all in. And here is my favorite part of finishing up the piece, the overlays and multiply layers. This part is my favorite because these layers work really well to set a tone for a piece as a whole. More cooler colors may give off a more solemn feel, but more warm colors can give comfort and happiness. With this knowledge, I can use it to my advantage by giving the background a more solemn feel, while also giving my character comfort and emphasizing the growth between her ribs. I then do more rendering by doing some lighting with airbrush for a bit more depth for my subject and the environment around her. I really am proud of this piece, and I only decided to create it because of a silly tweet that I thought was poetic, and then chose to make it into a wallpaper on a whim. To be honest, I don't do a lot of big illustrations like this. I always tell myself that I will do more, but struggle to find motivation and energy to do so. So I'm glad I was able to push through and finish this one because it was really worth it in the end. And we have finally reached the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Bye bye!